Geek Vibes Live is rated G for geek.
Welcome once again to another edition of GVN's Talking Comics. I'm your host, Martin, and we have the pleasure again today of talking to Bryan Hirota, who is the VFX supervisor for ScanlineVFX. And remember last time we talked to him about Mr. Snyder's Justice League cut, and today we're going to be talking about big monsters fighting. We're going to be talking about Godzilla versus Kong. So without any further ado, let's welcome Bryan Hirota to GVN's Talking Comics. How you doing, Bryan?
Great. Thank you, Martin, for having me back.
Yep. We can keep this up if you're you're willing to do it. Okay. So before we get into the film itself, you are the VFX supervisor for Scanline VFX. Can you tell me a little bit just what your job entails? Because I know you've done all kinds of things in your career of different jobs, but you've been this VFX supervisor for a while now. So what exactly does that entail?
What that entails, so being the VFX supervisor on a film, that means that I'm in charge of the overall body of work that gets awarded to that company to do for that film. As the visual effects supervisor, you're the primary client interface between the company and the production side visual effects supervisor. It's your job to, both, work with them, take their feedback on the work, and then direct the team back at the company to produce the work that then, you present back to the company. So that, runs the gamut of everything from, overseeing concepts and designs to animation, to being responsible for the final quality of the imagery delivered back to the film.
Okay, so that being the case, so if, when you start work, if they have any kind of issues or things that they'd like to see tweaked, they would go to you first?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, so since we're talking about, Godzilla versus Kong, and you start this project, so what do they supply you? Do they supply you with concept drawings of what they want? What do they supply you to work with initially?
I guess it depends. Like on this film, like when DJ got on the film, Adam had already been doing previs for some of these sequences, because like shortly after he got brought on to the film, he and I were talking about ways to collaborate. And he showed me previews for the ocean battle sequence that had already been underway. One thing that came up in our discussion for this film was, like the idea of having Scanline work on this and what might be a good fit or not a good fit. Because up till this point, Scanline hadn't done a lot of this big creature work. Mm-hmm. So, Scanline's well known for doing a lot of destruction and complex simulation work, but giant creatures hadn't done so much of that up to this point. The idea was, well, maybe we would take some shots from this ocean battle, just so that everyone could get an appropriate comfort level with our ability to handle this kind of work, both fighting the creatures fighting on the, we picked a few shots of Godzilla swimming the carrier, climbing on the carrier, and Kong punching him. And then also, just to demonstrate our ability to convey emotion through Kong himself. For this test, we spent a couple months, we took the previs as inspiration, and we received the Godzilla from the King of the Monsters, the asset, the model, and the textures. And we also received ILM's Skull Island Kong. And and so then we started deving out these shots. And one thing we did in the course of our tests was we took the more adolescent Kong from Skull Island, and we aged him up. We gave him additional body mass and strength. We tweaked his groom, like some longer hair, a little bit of a beard, some white and gray hairs mixed in the black and brown. hairs. And ultimately we presented those shots, and and we had a shot of Kong visiting Gia, or being visited by Gia, and being sad in the rain. We carried those shots to completion on our end, and we showed them to DJ and the studio, and everybody liked them quite a bit. They liked our treatment of Kong so much that ultimately we got asked to develop the hero asset for this old man Kong, for the movie, which we did. And so, like when you ask, like when you start this process, what are you given? Like, for the older Kong, we had the Skull Island Kong. We got some concept art of some idea of what an older Kong could look like, but we really kind of took it, and ran with it. We looked into what happens to primates when they get older, like how, what are sort of the tells for an old gorilla or an old chimpanzee. Kong himself, isn't exactly a gorilla. He's a, sort of anthropomorphized, primate. He's a lot of his proportions are very human,
Right.
as well. So we looked at like bodybuilders, MMA fighters, and boxers who were older and sort of past their prime, to see like how their physique changes as they get older as well. We kind of brought all of those resources to bear and sort of synthesize them into what sort of became what we sort of affectionately called like the old man Kong.
Kong from Skull Island, they used a lot of mocap during that. You guys didn't really use much in the way of mocap for this film, did you?
We did for Kong, not for Godzilla or
Right.
for Mechagodzilla, but for Kong, most of the shots at least had as a base a full body and facial capture session that we did in our Vancouver studio. Our animation supervisor, Eric Peaty, would go in and he would act out. He would act out all the shots of Kong where it made sense to do some motion capture, which was quite a lot of them. Like our facial stuff ran through our facial performance system that we would feed Eric's facial performance back into our animation rig. His face and human faces aren't exactly, there's not a one-to-one mapping with Kong's face,
Right.
but we were able to use machine learning and refine it over time to get better and better targeted result from Eric's performance in the motion capture stage. And we felt it was, valuable to capture the face and the body at the same time, because there's such an interconnection between how your face works and how your body works, that ideally you would capture both those actions, at the same. And I feel like having that as a basis for Kong's, we would get that to a certain level and then turn that over to the animators to work from. But it felt like having a base like that, there was sort of like a consistent performance from a singular actor, in the motion capture stage, helped give him like Kong like a personality and sort of consistency in his behavior.
Right. And it's one thing you notice in the film, especially, whenever especially you get a close up of Kong's face. I mean, the emotion that shows is really quite amazing. Now, I remember reading somewhere when I was preparing for this, is it true that they said that, the original people behind Godzilla did not want him expressing a whole lot of emotion with his face? Was that true?
You know what? I don't know. Like I saw that as well. We took most of our cues for what Godzilla should or shouldn't be doing, from Adam's direction or notes from DJs. There's not a lot of points for him to Godzilla to be expressive in Pensacola or the ocean battle, really, because he's just like, there's another Titan around. Like I'm Godzilla, I'm the king.
Right.
there were some moments in the big three-way fight with Mecha and Kong where, you know, Godzilla, you know, definitely gets hurt by Mecha. You know, we did have instructions, which to my understanding did come down from Toho, that nothing that Mecha or Kong for that matter could do to Godzilla could permanently damage him. Like they had to sign off like the wounds that the axe caused to him, or the burning that Mecha did when, you know, Mecha overpowers him with the beam.
Right.
Because like, you know, like his eye gets swollen a little bit, but like none of that damage, you know, could stay damaged to the end. I mean, that was definitely something that we were told.
So no
I guess,
permanent damage.
yeah, you know, so I guess what you know, what you're saying about, you know, there being limits to like how much range that of emotion that people wanted from Godzilla. I don't know. Sounds believable. No one ever directly told us that. People did tell us about damage, but I also at the same time, I don't know, sounds believable.
Right. Okay, you mentioned Mechagodzilla. So what was the challenges of working with Mechagodzilla?
You know, like taking the approved design and just making it functional and making sure we added enough small scale details to help it register as, you know, the size that he wanted to be in the movie, and also mechanically try to make all of the joints and the feet and the hands and the jaw, like all of that really functional. We added a bunch of internal support structures and, you know, pistons and gears and things, you know, and a lot of that stuff, you know, visually doesn't play a huge role in how Mecha's used in the film, but we wanted to make sure like he was as functional as possible. You know, and would, you know, within the logic of having a gigantic metal dinosaur, like he, you know, he would work.
Right. But so I guarantee you somebody would be looking and saying, so that shouldn't be how his gear works. I guarantee if you didn't take that kind of attention, somebody would have pointed it out.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of eagle-eyed people out there.
Let's take a scene. Let's talk about you know, Godzilla's attack on Pensacola. How long does it actually take? I mean, this is kind of a broad-based question, but you might be able to give me just kind of an idea. I mean, they give you that scene, but how much time is necessary to actually complete a scene like that? I mean, are we talking months? Are we talking what are we talking?
I mean, most of like a scene like that from start to finish, you know, it's generally months, because like factoring into that, there's the with that in particular, especially that's the opening, like the first time you see Godzilla, and in the world of the movie, it's the first time anyone sees Godzilla in years.
Right.
And so, you know, there were a number of ideas for how you know, Godzilla would first make his appearance. We did several different types of animation layouts and blocking, you know, for Adam and for the studio, you know, based on ideas people had for, you know, like, well, maybe we first see Godzilla, you know, at the bottom of the ocean, and, you know, and then he comes out, you know, or maybe this or maybe that. So that process actually took, you know, weeks and months on its own, just to get everybody on board with, okay, well, this is the, you know, general idea. Godzilla's seen marching past these big cranes, you know, coming at Pensacola, and Serizawa and Simmons are up, you know, on top of the building, seeing him come. From there, it's refining the animation and getting that approved for like where are these planes and where's, you know, Godzilla, you know, what's he doing specifically. And once that's approved, you can sort of split off in parallel paths of having you know, your look dev artists work on how the, you know, the different assets that are seen in the shot look, exactly what's going on, like with the sky, and have effects artists start to sort out, you know, missiles and explosions, And since in that particular scene, especially in the beginning, like Godzilla's underwater swimming and pushing a large volume of water around, sorting out the dynamics and the look on a fluid simulation like that, like that doesn't happen overnight as well.
Right.
So I guess there's a lot of different departments that latch on to a shot or sequence like that, and like that it has to be sort of staged sequentially, and at certain points in that branch, many disciplines can attack it, in parallel. There's a considerable element that has to go on in something like that to bring it ultimately to realization where that then is the shot you have in the film.
I mean, so how many times, would you have to pass? I guess you pretty much almost every stage you got to pass it through, through the studio to almost. I guess it'd be almost like each section. So I would imagine that also adds into your time frame.
Yeah, because like we have an idea of what the sky look like, but I would present that back to Adam and DJ, like some options, like here are some options for the sky. Like I might like this one. You guys tell me what you guys think. And then like with the big simulation of Godzilla underwater, before we go through and do all the secondary sims and everything, I want to show them like this is what I think, how I think Godzilla should affect the water. And I want them to agree or disagree, at that stage before we push the buttons and, like really get the computers to crank out a super expensive simulation on it.
I mean, so have you ever had a situation where, where you had like one of your team been working on a scene for a while and, and it appears to be going pretty good. And then suddenly, for whatever reason, they say, okay, now we need to make this change. Is that, I assume that's part of your job to have to go back to your team. It's okay. I know we've been doing this, but now we need to make this tweak. Well, is that going to be a problem?
Yes. Yeah. And sort of, balancing that like figuring out how to execute the work, and managing that both internally and externally back with the clients if there's costs associated with this or that, like that's something that the visual effects supervisor and the visual effects producer at the facility need to juggle back with the production.
Okay, and see, we were talking about the ocean battle, and like I said, again, just because now that I've gotten to talk to you a little bit, there's so much stuff that I took for granted for the most part, and because you're not only worried about the characters in the water, you're also worried about how the water reacts to the characters and how the water is displaced and all kinds of things. That just watching that on screen, you think, wow, that's really cool, but you don't realize all the thought that went into something that again we take for granted, of how water reacts to Godzilla or to Kong.
Yeah, like that whole the ocean battle. It's funny that way because you have these two creatures battling, but their whole battleground it is a dynamic simulated environment because everything that they interact with needs to react to them and be simulated in a fairly complex way.
So was the tools that you used for the ocean battle, was that something you already had on hand to work with, or is that something you had to develop?
Yeah, Scanline has a deep history in doing complex fluid simulations, so that definitely like Scanline FX department, it's pretty strong in doing fluid simulations and doing destruction work. So, having the experience that those guys have in doing that really helped with the ocean battle because that featured heavily with both of those aspects. A lot of stuff got destroyed and there was a lot of fluid simulations to do.
Okay. You also did, I think you did the Hong Kong City uh, scenes. Now, was this an entirely virtual Hong Kong City, or was there any part of it, actually
Um,
staged?
there in the daytime Hong Kong battle, like once the sun came up, I think there are 3 or 4 bits of photography that are used, but the rest of the shots are virtual. We did though spend a considerable amount of time trying to build a very accurate, Hong Kong around Victoria Gardens leading up to the peak, because we knew that's where the fight was going to take place. We built something on the order in our Hong Kong that we built. There are around 400-ish buildings that are able to be destroyed, with interiors built with concrete and glass and metal, and there's office furniture and beds and things in the apartment. We production had shot some helicopter footage and some drone footage in Hong Kong that we used to build a kind of deep cyclorama for the bay around Hong Kong Island and the Kowloon side and any of the deeper mountain ridge, so that we had like what you might consider at the infinity point, that was a 2.5D cyclorama built off photography. But aside from a handful of shots, the Hong Kong was our virtual 3D city with the support of the 2.5D psych behind it.
Right. So is a scene like that easier or harder than working with just the creatures?
It's harder in the sense that like the Hong Kong asset itself, is a massive build, and the only reason that exists is so that it can get destroyed.
Sure. Yeah. Now, I learned my lesson last time not to sit there and ask you about things that you can't talk about, because you're Rocky Gibraltar about not spilling anything. But what films are actually you guys just? I mean, you don't have to tell me anything about it. Just tell me which films are you actually working on at this time?
I'm not exactly sure. Like if it's on Scanline's website, like I know that it can be discussed. They're working like films that Scanline is working on or has worked on that are
Right.
coming out. Actually, let me look. I can tell you for myself, I did work on James Gunn's Suicide Squad, which is coming out this year.
So that might be our next discussion then.
That might be our next discussion. And if I look,
Yes.
if I look on Scanline's website for projects, well, there's this Stephen King's Lizzie story, Marvel's Eternals, Matt Reeves' Batman.
Oh, that's going to
Shadow.
we'll be talking you up about that.
Yeah.
So
So
no shortage of projects to be you're working on. Now, like I said, the Godzilla Kong thing was, like I said, was a little different than the stuff that you normally work on. Does that set you guys up for maybe doing something similar in the future, or was that just I don't know if that's just a one-time thing and you kind of stick to your strengths, or do you think that you proved enough in this to possibly maybe in the future get something, be the main vendor on something similar?
I mean, I don't know, I maybe, like if people who decide these things like the work and the project, also from Scanline side makes sense for them to work on. I think that's a possibility.
Yeah, if I were to judge by the reaction of our followers, they all love the film. Of course, you got some folks that were rooting for Godzilla, and some rooted for Kong, so you have that thing. But I haven't seen anyone who didn't think the film was great. Of course, they wish things were a little different, where it was entirely at the theaters, because they think that's probably still the best way to see it, either through the theater or through IMAX. But until we get to that point, I guess we work with what we got.
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten a pretty good response, which has been nice.
All right. Well, that's all I got for you, Brian. And well, of course, we will continue to be following what you're doing. And I imagine probably next time I talk to you, we might be talking Suicide Squad.
Yeah, that'll be cool. Yeah, no, I look forward to it, and I enjoyed speaking with you again, Martin.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. And we'll catch you next time. Thank you very much.
All right, take care.